speaker, Sheikh Wissam Sharkawi. Sheikh Wissam is from the Sydney Muslim community. Sheikh Wissam, being a leader, has used his voice for justice and truth. Please welcome Sheikh Wissam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to any elders that are here today. I want to start by telling a story of a young woman called Gaza Sabatin. Gaza Sabatin was visually impaired. As she approached the checkpoint in Gaza, she deviated from walking in a straight line and began to zigzag. The Israeli occupying forces shot her dead from about 2 to 3 meters away. Rayyan Suleiman, a six-year-old young boy, was coming home from school and he was chased down by IDF forces. He ran into his home with no previous conditions, suffered a cardiac arrest and died. Every single day, the IDF forces, every single day, they pat down our sisters, our women, our children in front of their husbands, in front of their fathers. They frisk our women every single day. Any resistance is met with the harshest approach. Just last night, the Shifa Hospital reported 39 deaths, babies in the ICU unit who couldn't survive because of the lack of oxygen, because there was no electricity. A missile bomb that took out a young girl named Rayyan. She became paralyzed in half her body. I heard from the doctor in the emergency unit who said we can't turn on the machine to extract the mucus from her body because it's suffocating her as she's lying in her bed. They could do nothing for her. I have a message for Anthony Albanese, and I have a message for the Labour government. What does Israel have to do to earn one condemnation? Just one condemnation. What does it have to do? What breach does it have to perform? Is the Palestinian blood, is the Palestinian and Arab and Muslim blood so cheap that you would sacrifice it for a political cause, that you would spill it for a political maneuver? That's the question I want to put to the Labour government. Will you condemn the thousands of innocent babies? What about the mosques? What about the hospitals? What about the churches? You look around today, there's not just Muslims here today. There are Muslims, there are Christians, there are Jews for Palestine. Every single person has come here today in pursuit of justice. Your response should have transcended politics. It should have transcended Israel has a right to defend itself. It should have transcended politics, and it should have been about humanity. It should have been about the salvation of human life. Every single life is sacred. Every single life is sanctified. When you sanctify a life, you dismantle hatred. You dismantle racism. When you honor a life, in fact, you are honoring all lives and providing an umbrella where you can stand in solidarity, not just with one people, but with all peoples. Craig McIver, the head of the United Nations High Commission, he called it textbook genocide. Antonio Guterres, he said that Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children. Amnesty International called it apartheid. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, said that Israel has cases to answer for war crimes. But Australia called it self-defense. The United States called it self-defense. Never in the history of battle, never has any occupying force ever presented itself as the victim or the only victim. But what we have here is absolute endorsement by Western governments that simply allowing another genocide to unfold on our watch in 2023. In international humanitarian law, there is something known as the law of armed conflict. The law of armed conflict dictates that you cannot hit or target civilians that have nothing to do with the conflict, and it restricts the means and methods of warfare. Why has this government not stood for this just right? Why has this government cowered? What's the fear? What are you afraid of? You lecture on the principles and morals of justice, but you allow Israel and the Zionist forces a free pass. Instead of unifying Australia, instead of coming forward and calling for an immediate ceasefire, what you've done is that you've showed the Australian people that you don't really care about Islamophobia. You're using the same language that the Israeli occupying forces is using to decimate a people that is indigenous to the Palestinian lands. You are using the same language. A 6-year-old boy in Illinois was stabbed by his 71 landlord neighbor. He stabbed him and he stabbed his mother. The boy died, and to date, his mother is still in the IC unit in hospital, trying to heal from her wounds. Selective empathy, selective outrage, selective morals. These are the ingredients for another unfolding of a genocide. We cannot be selective in our empathy. You lit up the Opera House. You lit up the sales of the Opera House. Chris Minns and his ilk. Isn't one child, isn't the death of one child, doesn't that mean that you should now light up every single sale of that Opera House from now and for many years to come? Doesn't one child, isn't that child precious to their mother? Isn't that child precious to their father? They're writing the names of their child on individual body parts, so when they dig them out of the rubble, they're able to identify their child so they can bury them whole. Isn't one child worth a ceasefire? So what now? We call on the Australian government. We call on the Australian government, Anthony Albanese and his ilk, and Penny Wong, and all those elected officials that were put into the government by their constituents, who are not echoing the voices of their constituents. We call on them to issue a ceasefire immediately. Stand on the principles of justice. Stand on the principles of value. Stand on the principles of courage. Be courageous. Don't cower. History will always remember you for the person who did not stand on the side of courage and honor and dignity and respect and justice. Call for a ceasefire. But after a ceasefire, we can't go back to what was. The Palestinian people must be free. We cannot go back to occupation. Anthony Albanese painted this picture wrong. This was never about the Jewish people. This was never been about the Jewish people. It's not religious in nature, but you painted that scenario. You painted a target so people would support yourself and Israel. This has never been about the Jewish people. This has always been about occupation. Every single day, the Palestinian people are subject to daily humiliation, and I quote Amnesty International. Every single day is daily humiliation and daily fear. Brothers and sisters, and everyone that's come out here today, we should never lose hope in the maker and the creator of this cosmos. They can never wipe out the Palestinians into oblivion. The Palestinian people will never be forgotten, and they'll never be wiped out into oblivion. And God is their protector. We do what's on us, but God is their ultimate protector, and He will protect them, and He will give justice and serve justice to those who do not know what the very definition of justice was. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them and be with them and have mercy upon them. Thank you very much for everybody who's come out here today. Tomorrow we will deliver this very message to Canberra, standing at the doors of Parliament House, beseeching Anthony Albanese and his ilk, and sending the very same messages tomorrow at 12 p.m. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept and be with our brethren, Muslim brothers and sisters, and all those who are oppressed wherever they may be. Jazakumullah kulli khair.